Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's conversation on the YouTube Creators Hub podcast. My name is Dusty Porter, the host of the show, as always, joined today by Ian, aka, or also known as Tank on the internet. Ian's been touring in the music industry for 16 years, working for bands from club sizes all the way up to arenas and stadiums. When the pandemic happened, all the touring was canceled, and he was forced to find something else to do to make ends meet. Decided to start a YouTube channel focusing on music-related content, and in just under 3 years, his channel has reached, get this, 200,000 subscribers, and content is basically his full-time job at this point, even though he still tours from time to time. Ian, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I've got a bunch of questions.
Okay.
The name of the YouTube channel is Tank the Tech, which I think is awesome.
Thank you.
And you are killing it. Like you said, 200 some odd thousand subscribers, over 650 videos uploaded at this point. So give us the origin story. You kind of gave us a brief synopsis there in the intro, but give us the origin story of the Tank the Tech YouTube channel.
So, I mean, obviously, as you said, I've been touring my entire adult life working for bands. And when the pandemic happened, we got sent home from tour. And, when it first happened, they were like, oh, we're just going to be off for a month. And then it was, hey, we're going to be off for 6 months. Hey, we're off for the rest of the year. So there was nothing else for me to do. Like, it's not like I could go out and really get a job somewhere or something like that. So I just had this idea to do content. And honestly, I will admit, and this was like a huge learning moment, YouTube wasn't my first thing. It was actually Twitch. I really like playing video games. And I was like, hey, I'll just, upgrade some gear, do some Twitch streams, and everybody's going to watch and I'm going to make a ton of money playing video games. Well, saying that out loud, I mean, that's really unrealistic. Like what I know now, it's like, it is extremely difficult, especially if you're gaming on Twitch, to get people to follow your content if you're brand new. So I went about a month of like 2 average viewers, and then I was like, all right, I'm going to branch out into other content. And one of my friends that I actually toured with was like, you know what you'd be really good at? He's like reaction videos on YouTube are like blowing up right now. And this, 3 years ago, again, it was, still kind of building. Like now, the reaction market on YouTube is insane. It's highly oversaturated, honestly. But at the time, it really wasn't. So I started doing that. I created a YouTube channel. I was like, I'm going to do music reactions. And, I want to bring something different to it. I want to bring a perspective to it because a lot of the reaction videos on YouTube are people literally just checking out music, which is totally cool. But I was like, I have such a unique background working in the industry and working for bands. I was like, how can I make this my own? And I will admit, if you watch like my first month's worth of videos, it was your typical just sit and watch music and maybe talk about a couple things. Mm-hmm. And then I slowly started building in the talk about gear and production, and it became more like my kind of inspiration was like the pop-up video stuff on VH1 back in the day where, during the video, I have pop-ups that come up about what kind of gear is going on, facts about the band, maybe production things that people wouldn't know. And it started taking off like fast. And I didn't expect that. I think from 0 to 1,000 subscribers for me was like 12 days from my first video, which I thought was mind blowing. And of course, 1,000 subscribers is the point of monetization on YouTube for people. But what I realized after that is that there's a whole different part of this music game on YouTube because copyrights are a thing. So even though a lot of my videos were doing very well, I wasn't actually making money. So while I was still doing the reaction videos in the early days of my channel, and I still do them occasionally now, but I have more original content where I talk about the music industry and I have a podcast and stuff like that. I really didn't want to do the dispute appeal process that you can do with copyrights on YouTube. So I started reaching out to record labels, just cold, went to their websites, emailed them, introduced myself on their general emails, and just said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. If you're interested in actually working together, if you want to clear copyrights on my videos so I can monetize, send me your new releases and I'll work them in the schedule and stuff like that. And believe it or not, there's at this point, 20 record labels that actually approve of me using their content. And they send me their new releases and stuff like that. So it kind of built into this thing where I was working almost hand in hand with labels. Like they weren't paying me directly to do things. And I would never do that personally, just because I feel like kind of sway your bias if you're doing videos like that. But yeah, it got to the point where I actually started bringing in money from doing this. And about, and it's not a lot for people that are listening. I don't want you to think like right away, like I was making bank. Like even now, 3 years later, I wouldn't say I'm exceeding luxury by any means. Like I'm able to pay my bills, which is cool, but it took a lot of time. But after, I would say 2021, when 2022 really rolled around, I was like, I think this is what I'm going to do full time. Like, I think I can make this happen.
Mhm.
And because the YouTube started doing well, that in turn led to more people watching in Twitch. So about a year after I started YouTube, I went back to Twitch, which has now become a regular thing because there is that big crossover where people watch you on YouTube and then they want to see you live on Twitch. So it is very hard to get one of the two things started, and I've learned a ton along the way, and it's still 3 years later, I feel like I'm still learning things about how all this content creation works every single day.
Yeah, I can tell you, I'm still learning. I've been doing it for over 10 years, and there's still tons of things that I don't understand about it. Things change all the time. I want to focus in on one thing you said. You mentioned you went from like 0 to 1,000 subscribers within 12, 13 days. What do you think attributed to that? Because I have a lot of folks listening to this show that think that they'll never reach that milestone, that they'll never reach, 1,000 subscribers. And I want them to be encouraged and know that, yeah, it may not happen in 12 or 13 days, like what Ian's talking about, but it can happen. So what would you attribute that quick kind of, you can say success or growth, whatever you want to call it?
So yeah. The growth, I would be lying if I said it was all me. That quick of growth was absolutely because of the content format I was doing. It was reaction videos. Because with reaction videos, there is a built-in fan base of those bands that want to see people react to the bands that they already like. It doesn't matter who's doing it. I've seen this. I see this all the time on YouTube. It could be somebody brand new, but if they do a reaction to like a band that has a very diehard fan base, it's gonna get views. And I will absolutely admit that that's what did it. Like it was the selection of bands that I was reacting to at the time. Now, what I've learned from that though is that you, the content creator, you have to keep people there. You can draw people to your channel by using like other forms of content, whether you're doing a reaction or you're playing a video game that people like. Like if the topic of your video is something popular that will get people's attention, it will get people to your channel, but you have to keep them there. Because I've watched tons of content that's popped up in my feed I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. And then I watch it and I'm just like either bored with the creator or it just, it's the topic of your videos will get people to your channel, but you as a content creator are the person that has to keep them there, whether you're entertaining or knowledgeable or you're bringing something new to the table. It's the same with, a lot of bands with these reactors will be like, thanking reactors for doing what they do to expose people to their music. And that's cool. But I'm like, your music has to be good to build those fans. I can show people your music, but your band actually has to be good. So in my opinion, reactors aren't necessarily building fan bases for bands or doing anything like that. We're just kind of discovering music on our own now. Like I said, I've gotten away from doing reactions. I never wanted to be a full-time reaction content channel on YouTube. So now I'm focusing a lot on music news and, things that are happening behind the scenes in the music industry and doing explanations of stuff. And I think because I did build that reputation early on as like, with the reaction community online, you have tons of vocal coaches doing things, tons of musicians doing things, stuff like that. I may be wrong, but it's like I was one of the first like roadies doing this stuff, which is a unique perspective. Like it's not something you normally see on YouTube, somebody talking about the behind the scenes stuff. So now that I've shifted away from reactions and I'm doing more original content where I'm talking about, for example, I had a video recently where I broke down the prices of tour buses like how much it costs a band to rent a tour bus. And I actually showed the breakdown on screen and stuff like that. People know my reputation well enough now to know that if they watch a video like that, they're going to find out some cool information, and I'm going to be honest about everything. So I focus more on content like that now that it's been a couple years and people know my reputation. But, you know, going back to what you asked, it's definitely the topic of content that got people to my channel that quick. If I had been trying to do the videos I'm doing now right out of the gates, it wouldn't have worked. Like you have to learn what works quick and then adapt over time, and always keep adapting with what's working for your channel.
But you had to keep them there somehow, right? You had to do
Yeah.
something for retention. Is it storytelling? Is it the way you present? What would you say would be the things that you bring, or the attributes that you have as a creator that you think have helped you kind of succeed at such a quick pace?
It's the unique perspective, I believe. If I had to guess on one thing, it was because, like I said, with reactions on YouTube at the time being kind of oversaturated, and you had everybody, vocal coach reacts to, musician reacts to, bass player, guitar player, whatever. It was the whole roadie reacts to perspective where I was able to actually talk about behind the scenes things and maybe stories that I could relate to what I was watching. Because, you watch a music video for a reaction, and music videos, between 3 and 5 minutes on average. And my videos would end up being 12 to 15 minutes long because I'm spending so much time talking about, if the band is using pyro at a live show, I take the time to explain how they're doing that effect, or whether it's gas-based pyro or liquid or something like that. So I think it was the unique perspective at the time that people weren't getting from other channels that led to them being like, oh, this is actually cool. Like I'm actually learning something while I'm checking this video out. So if I were to guess, I would say that's what did it. I've had a lot of people also, and I say this humbly, it feels weird to say this out loud. I've had a lot of people also say they just like me, like my personality. So that could have something to do with it too, because I know when I watch YouTube videos, if I don't like enjoy the person that's actually making the video, it's like, I don't really have a connection or a reason to watch. And, I feel as though a lot of content creators, and I talk about this with a lot of other YouTubers a lot. I feel as though a lot of content creators feel as though they can see what works for somebody else, and then they try it and they expect it to work the same as it worked for somebody else. And it doesn't, because people aren't trying to adapt and turn content into their own. And I think that's where they're making the mistake. They're just trying to copy something that somebody else has done because they think it'll work for them. Copying happens a lot, but where content creators succeed at that is when they get the idea from somebody, and instead of just copy and pasting that content in their own way, they turn it into their own thing. And that goes back to what I was saying, where while reactions are a very popular thing that tons and tons of people do, I was really focused on turning it into my own thing that made me unique and set me apart from everybody else doing that.
Right. And also another thing to talk about with what you just said is that not only, you talk about personality, and don't ever feel bad about saying that people are coming to your channel for you, because that's true. Also, when you copy what other folks are doing, you don't look like they look. You may not sound like they sound. They're building a persona. They're building a content around themselves as a person. One of my favorite creators ever is Peter McKinnon. I love what Peter McKinnon does for photography, videography. I would watch anything he puts out because I like him. I like what he does as a person and the personality that he brings. And so, like you said, you can, copy and paste what other folks are doing, but unless you bring your own thing. And I just recorded a podcast episode a couple of weeks ago about niching down and finding your target audience. And you just basically did a perfect, you basically explained perfectly what it means to niche down, in that you gave a perspective from a roadie, from a person who's been on tour with bands, and you brought it from your perspective, and you started covering content that other folks have covered before, but you did it from your point of view, from your perspective. So I really do. I love the explanation that you gave. I want to talk now about just the process of making videos. You're obviously a creative person. So what is your process? Like, give us the full rundown of from start to finish when you make a video, ideation all the way to, post-production. What are you doing?
So I think I've surprised a lot of other content creators when I tell them this, but planning wise, I don't do anything. Like I think what works for my channel is the kind of rawness and authenticity of the way that I deliver my videos. I know there's YouTubers out there that when they're doing a video, they pre-script it out. Even if they're not reading the script on screen, they at least put out like a table of what they want to cover and stuff like that. I don't do any of that ever. When it comes to reaction videos, I literally just sit down and hit record and go. I don't cut anything. It's one solid take because I want to deliver that authenticity. And then when I do a lot of my music industry videos, I do kind of just sit here. I know what I want to talk about, and I kind of just hit record and sit here and talk. And when I do those original content videos talking about the industry, there probably are some cuts that I do in post-production when I'm making the video. But for me, I sit here, I turn on my camera, I hit record, and I just go. And for me, I feel like that's what works. It may not be the same that everybody else does, because like I said, it's all about finding you and what works for you. But I feel as though I deliver my points best when I just sit and talk. And so, you know, when I sit down to do a video, that's how I start. And then once I finish it, I, you know, do the same thing everybody else does. I pull it into my editor, I edit. There are certain times where, you know, if I say something, I might think of something random, like a meme or a clip or something that I'll throw in just to be funny. I don't do that too much. Like I don't do a lot of like zooms and pans and stuff like that. A lot of my videos are just straight on like talking head. But you know, the editing process for me is super interesting because I enjoy doing it like a lot. But sometimes time is an issue and motivation. I think one thing a lot of YouTubers don't talk about is the motivation behind you know, creating content. You get burned out, you get mentally exhausted. You know, I'm married, I have a 2-year-old. I'm advancing a tour right now that I'll be doing this summer. There are days where I know I need to do content to have it ready for the following week, but I just don't want to. And when I feel like that, I usually just convince myself to not do it and take a night off, because if you are not in that headspace of filming content and you do it anyways, it's going to come across in the video. People are going to know. They're going to know that like you're not into whatever you're doing and you're just pumping something out to do it. So I have made it a point to not do content when I just don't feel as though I'm in the right headspace to do it. But a lot of people have suggested, well, why don't you get an editor? And I know there's a lot of YouTubers, bigger and smaller than my channel, that have full-time editors. And for me, especially with the reaction video stuff, because of all the pop-ups and talking that I do about gear, while there are absolutely competent editors out there that know what they're doing, that are fantastic at their jobs, I just don't feel like somebody is going to do it the same way I would. And again, going back to the rawness and authenticity of how I do my videos, I feel as though, like I said, while there are editors out there that would probably do a better job overall than I would at editing the video, those little pop-ups and those little clips and little things that are thrown in, another person editing my video may not think of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what makes that stuff unique to each person doing it. I mean, there's huge YouTubers that like don't do it, especially in the music and metal scene. Like I am, like Nick Nocturnal is a great example. Dude has over 800,000 subs. He's been doing this for like 8-9 years. He does everything himself. He doesn't have an editor. He doesn't have anybody else doing anything for him. And I've talked to him about this, and he's like, it's because I don't need anybody to do it. Like, and that's kind of how I feel right now too. And if I ever do get to the point where I need to do that, like I will. But you know, once I edit a video, then there's a lot more time into it than a lot of people would think. I mean, the joke, the roast that content creators hear, you're probably familiar with it more than anything, is, oh, your job's easy. All you do is make videos. Dude, the easiest part is filming.
Oh yeah.
It's everything after that's the difficult part. And even when you finish editing a video, then you've got to create a thumbnail and you've got to do your titles and your SEO stuff. And that's something I never paid attention to until probably the last year. I didn't realize how important those things are. The thumbnail that grabs people's attention, the title that not only grabs people's attention, but that will actually push the SEO and stuff like that. So in the last few months, I've been trying new things with that. I've been trying new thumbnails. I've been trying new titles with videos. And right now, May of 2023 is the best month I've ever had on YouTube in 3 years doing this in terms of views, watch time, new subs, revenue, everything. And it's really made me realize like, wow, like you really have to adapt with all this stuff and learn new things. Like you can't just keep doing things that you were doing a year ago because times change, things change, people's attention spans change. Like you constantly have to adapt. And I think one of the rough things that I've heard from other content creators is they have a down month and they're going, oh, the algorithm hates my channel. I was like, well, the algorithm is your audience. So instead of blaming the algorithm, take a step back and look at your content. What are you doing or what are you not doing? What's different than what you were doing before? And if it's not working, change it up. Change it up and see what happens, you know?
Yeah, I think that a couple of things I want to pull out of that answer you just gave is number one, motivation. You know, you can't phone it in and record a video and expect to produce good content, regardless of whatever you create. You know, you're creating talking head videos. I create tutorial how-to tech content. The funniest thing about what you said was about, you know, your job being easy as a creator. Whenever I tell anyone, you know, what I do, whether it be the YouTube stuff or oftentimes I don't know if you do this, but when you have conversations with people who don't work in a creative space, oftentimes I'll just tell them I work in technology because I don't want to have the conversation of like, man, you do YouTube? Is that a real thing? Is that even possible? Right. And it gets even worse when you say, oh, I've got a podcast, you know, because then people say, oh, everybody's got a podcast. I got a pod, you know, my mom's got a podcast. Well, that's fine. You may have a podcast. You may have recorded 7 or 8 episodes, but like I've recorded almost 1,000 episodes. I've done over 600 interviews. Like there's work that is involved in, you don't just get in front of a microphone. You've got to send the email out. You've got to get to know the guests. You've got to do the research on the guests. You've got to record the episode. You got to do post-production. You got to upload to the audio and on and on and on. This isn't something that you decide to do now and it just automatically happens. And what you said about going from 0 to 1,000 subscribers, that is the anomaly. Like that just does not happen in 2023 YouTube. And like you said, because of the content you're creating around it, kind of gave itself to doing that. And so I love that. I want to talk now, as we get towards the end of the interview, I want to talk now about revenue and monetization. You're doing this thing full-time now alongside doing some touring and gigging stuff. You know, you have a 2-year-old daughter, you're married. You know, I have a couple of young daughters as well. I'm married. I have other stuff that I do other than YouTube. Part 1 of this question is, how do you manage your time? And then part 2 is, how do you make money?
Well, the first part, managing time, honestly, I will fully admit I'm a very selfish person in the sense of I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to. And I've been like that my whole life. But when I had a kid, that changed. Like I had to absolutely adapt to that, where it's like, I can't be selfish with my time anymore. I absolutely have to make sure she's taken care of. One of the biggest parts about time management is that I have a very supportive wife who understands right now that this is an income stream. So there are times where I'll just tell her like, hey, I have to go do work, even if it's in the afternoon. Like right now, while we're filming, for example, it's like, it's at my time, it's, you know, 11:30 in early afternoon. And there would probably be other things that we're doing right now, but she understands when I tell her, I'm like, hey, I've got to go do this thing for content or work or whatever. Like she's very supportive of a lot of that. So, you know, if I tell her I need to go do work, she understands. Like she'll give me that time to go do that. So that is a huge help. It also helps that she works from home too. So we're both home with our daughter at all times. Somebody's watching her, like, and we do have this kind of give and take with each other. So she does the same thing. She's an artist. If she tells me during the day, like, hey, I need to go get some work done, then I will hang with our daughter and allow her to do that. So we kind of understand each other. And that's a huge part of it. Like, you know, being married and having somebody that understands what you do. And that goes to being a roadie as well. Like before I met my wife, I've dated so many people that like, they just didn't get it. Like they didn't understand that traveling nonstop and working for bands is how I make my living. That's how I make money. I know it's hard having your partner gone all the time and stuff like that, but my wife is the first person that really understood that. And she's come out on shows before, and she's seen what I do. She knows that I'm not just out there partying or whatever, like people think we're doing. It's a lot of work. So having that person in my situation that understands what I'm doing allows me to give that time, because she knows how important it is, because it literally is paying like our mortgage and our bills. So, you know, if I don't have that time in my day to go do content, then that definitely means, you know, we're going to be suffering financially somehow, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And now transition, speaking of paying the bills, transition into how are you making money, you know, from what you're doing right now?
So I think the important thing for content creators is to try and get multiple streams of revenue, not just rely on one. So for me, YouTube is by far the thing that brings in the most revenue, followed up by Twitch. I also have a Patreon, which I don't go crazy on my Patreon. There are people out there that do really cool things with their members and stuff like that. Mine is very simple. It's like I give patrons access to my videos like 48 to 60 hours early. There's a private Discord channel that they can join. It's like little things like that. And I include them on decision making. Like I might have polls up for like what I should do if, you know, I'm focusing on reactions or content. But you know, the thing that's still kind of stressful about everything is that you don't have a set income. You don't know what each of those things is going to bring in every month. Like, for example, last month just happened to be a down month for YouTube. In May, this month, I've already made double the revenue that I did in April of this year. And with YouTube, depending on the time of the year, ad revenue with AdSense changes based on what ads are being put out. You see that giant bump as Christmas starts approaching. Then the second it's over, you see the RPMs and CPMs go way down because advertisers are paying less. So you have to kind of adjust with all that too. And, you know, it's still kind of stressful at times, but it's kind of a long game, man. Like I said, the first year I did YouTube, I'll be 100% honest. Like the first year I did YouTube, the first full year, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, my income from AdSense was like $9,000.
Do you mind giving my audience a perspective of a 200,000 subscriber YouTube channel right now, average out the past 6 months? What is your average earnings from just AdSense alone from the channel?
Yeah. I'm fine with doing this kind of stuff. I'll just tell you right now, last 90 days, actually, let's go all of 2023 because it's so far YouTube AdSense in 2023 for me. So through about 5 months is about $17,000. Now you got to keep in mind, like I said, that includes like January, February, March, where revenue is notoriously low because of AdSense and advertisers and stuff. So as we approach the summer months, like you can see on my revenue graph on my analytics, like it started spiking this month. That could be due to AdSense numbers. That could be due to the content I'm doing. And I will admit, it's kind of funny. Like I was kind of naive when I first started YouTube. I thought like if you could somehow hit that 100,000 mark, you're set. Like you're like 6 figures a year. You're making tons of money. And I look back on that now and I was just like, I had no idea. Like I was just stupid to think that. I think the misconception for a lot of people is they look at YouTubers that have like 6 figures in subscribers and they think that they're making 6 figures in revenue. And that is not necessarily the case in a lot of situations. Like, you know, the other thing that you have to keep in mind too, is that Google, Twitch, Patreon, all that. If you're in the States, I don't know how countries outside of the US work, but if you're in the States, you get 1099 on that every year. So at the end of the year, you're going to have to be paying taxes on all of that too, which, you know, so during the year you need to save money. It's a lot when it comes to money with AdSense and YouTube and stuff. But, you know, like I said, it's all about playing the long game and building up. I mean, when it comes to patience with building content, you know, my perspective comes from the YouTubers I've made friends with that have been doing this for at least twice the length I have. I look at, again, I bring up Nick Nocturnal because he's a friend of mine, and he's been doing this for about 8 years. And I talk to him and he gives me great perspective because I look at his numbers now and what he's doing, and it's crazy. But he goes, dude, just keep in mind, you may be smaller than my channel right now, but he goes, in terms of when I started and where you are right now, you are doing better than I was at that time when I started. So it's like, that gives me the perspective to be like, okay, I can't just expect that this is going to be a huge, massive thing that's going to pay all my bills and more in the time that I've been doing it. And I always tell other content creators, like, don't get discouraged. If you really want to do content and you think you're onto something, like, don't get discouraged, because I still have my bad months. I still have my videos that don't do well. And one of the funniest things that I find with content sometimes is, like, I put so much time and effort into a video that I think is going to do really good. And then it just doesn't. For some reason, it just doesn't get the views. And then the next day I'll do a video, like I'll record something from one of my Twitch streams that's just goofy and stupid. And I'm just throwing it up for content, just to have content. And it crushes. The algorithm pushes it. The SEO latches on. I don't understand it sometimes. Like, I feel as though sometimes the harder you try, like, the less good the video does. And then you just do something fun and goofy and dumb and it just blows up. Yeah, it's such a weird thing in the content space, man.
Man, I feel the same way. I'll do like a 30-minute tutorial, like showing everyone start to finish how to upload a podcast and how to do this. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. And then I'll do like a simple tutorial showing them how to do something stupidly, what I think is stupid simple, and it ends up blowing up, getting like half a million views. It's just crazy what works and what doesn't.
And and really quick, like, depending on what you're doing, like, I've done the same. I do tutorials on my channel of, cause I'm a tech, I work on guitars. I've done tutorials on, like, how to fix specific things on guitars. Right. And you think that would do really good because it's an in-depth thing. But when you think about the topic of the video, how many people out there actually are looking for that thing? You know what I mean? It's like, I expect when I make a video like that people are going to watch it and it's going to be interesting and cool. And then it doesn't get as many views as I thought it would. And I was like, well, why? Because it's a very niche thing. Not that many people out there actually own guitars or these kinds of guitars that need to learn how to do this thing. So when it does come to those workthroughs and tutorials and stuff, I find that I put a lot of time and effort into them, but there's not as many people that are actually interested in that specific topic.
Yeah, that's completely true. Ian, you have been an awesome guest. You have so much knowledge, and not only do you have good knowledge, but you have a skill that very few people have. You can take that knowledge, you can break it down to its simplest form, and you have a great way of communicating it. And I've had a lot of guests here on the podcast, and very few are able to articulate the things that you are in such a simple way that people can understand. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an awesome opportunity to have you on the podcast. Where can my audience connect with you if they're looking to get in touch?
So first of all, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that a ton. It's very humbling. My handle on pretty much everything on social media is Tank the Tech. So if it's YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, it's just, /Tank the Tech. That's where you can find me.
Yep. And all of those links will be in the show notes of this podcast. Ian, thanks again for joining us this week, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening to this week's episode of the YouTube Creators Hub podcast. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget, you can subscribe to the show for absolutely free in your podcast player of choice. Also, there are ways you can connect with us. You can support us by supporting our sponsor, TubeBuddy, as well as supporting us over on Patreon to get access to our creator Discord community. And I also offer YouTube coaching and consultation, YouTube channel reviews, and just overall business coaching if that's something that you are wanting to look into. So make sure you check us out there, and we'll see you next week.